Captain Jake Morrison stared at the blue-green planet spinning slowly below his ship. The UES horizon hung in space like a metal bird watching its prey. Jake had seen many worlds in his 20 years of space exploration, but something felt different about this one. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, but the readings on his screens told a different story. "Captain, we're getting some strange signals from the surface," said Lieutenant Amy Collins from her station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she tried to make sense of the data flowing across her screens. "It's like the planet is completely dead, but there are these massive energy signatures coming from what looks like cities." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the readings himself. The planet below them was supposed to be empty according to all their star charts. The Kepler 442 system had never shown any signs of intelligent life when the long-range scouts had passed through 50 years ago. Now they were looking at clear evidence that someone had lived here and built some very advanced technology. "Get me Dr. Lisa Grant," Jake said into his communication device. Within minutes, the ship's lead archaeologist appeared on the bridge. Lisa was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. She had spent most of her life digging through the ruins of dead civilizations, and Jake trusted her judgment more than anyone else on his crew. "What do you think, Doc?" Jake asked, as he showed her the readings. "Could be natural phenomena, or are we looking at artificial structures down there?" Lisa studied the data for several minutes before she answered. "Those energy patterns are definitely artificial, Captain. Whatever built those structures had technology that was far beyond what most species achieve. The power sources are still active after what looks like hundreds of years of abandonment." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Finding dead civilizations was part of his job, but there was something unsettling about discovering an advanced species that had simply vanished. "Any idea what happened to them?" "Hard to say from up here," Lisa replied. "But if I had to guess, I'd say they didn't leave voluntarily. The energy signatures suggest the cities were abandoned suddenly, like everyone just stopped what they were doing and disappeared." Jake made his decision quickly. The UES Horizon was an exploration vessel designed for exactly this kind of mission. They had the equipment and the crew to investigate safely, and the discovery of an unknown advanced civilization was too important to ignore. "Dr. Grant, put together your best team. We're going down there." 2 hours later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay watching Lisa's archaeological team make their final preparations. Commander Alex Rodriguez joined him as they watched the scientists load their equipment. Alex was Jake's intelligence officer and one of the smartest people Jake had ever worked with. If there was something dangerous about this planet, Alex would find it. "What's your gut telling you about this one?" Jake asked Alex as they watched the team work. Alex was quiet for a moment before he answered. "Something doesn't feel right, Captain. Dead civilizations usually leave more traces behind. Bodies, records, some sign of what happened to them. But our long-range scans aren't picking up anything like that. It's like this entire species just decided to pack up and leave but forgot to take their cities with them." The shuttle launched an hour later with Lisa's team aboard. Jake stayed on the bridge monitoring their progress as they descended through the planet's atmosphere. The first real surprise came when they landed near what appeared to be the largest city. The buildings were huge, much larger than anything humans would build, and they were made from materials that their scanners couldn't identify. "Captain, you need to see this." Lisa's voice crackled through the communication system. "We've found what looks like a government building or maybe a library. The architecture is incredible, but that's not the important part. There are computer systems here that are still functioning." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Functioning alien computer systems could contain enormous amounts of information about the species that built them. "Can you access them?" "We're working on it now," Lisa replied. "The interface is completely alien, but our translation software is making some progress. Give us a few hours and we should be able to start pulling data." Those few hours felt like days to Jake. He paced the bridge while his crew monitored the away team's progress. Finally, Lisa's voice came through the speakers again, and this time she sounded excited and worried at the same time. "Captain, we've accessed their main database. The species that lived here called themselves the Vorthak, and they were not nice neighbors. These files contain records of systematic extermination campaigns against dozens of different species across the galaxy. They didn't just conquer other worlds, they completely wiped out entire civilizations. Jake felt his blood run cold. How many species are we talking about, Doc? So far, we've identified records for 43 different species that the Vorthak completely eliminated. They seem to view all other intelligent life as a threat that needed to be removed. But Captain, there's something else. Something that's going to change everything. Jake waited, but Lisa didn't continue speaking right away. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. They have detailed files on humans, Captain. Records of attacks on our colonies, our ships, our people. According to these files, the Vorthak tried to wipe out humanity completely sometime around 2156. The bridge fell silent. Every member of Jake's crew had stopped what they were doing to listen. The year 2156 was during humanity's early expansion into space. It was a time when human colonies were small and vulnerable, and when mysterious disasters had struck several settlements without explanation. Dr. Grant, are you telling me that the attacks on our early colonies weren't accidents or natural disasters? Jake asked. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Captain. The Mars research station that exploded in 2156, the Generation ship New, Horizon that vanished without a trace, the Alpha Centauri colony that went silent overnight, all of it was the Vorthak trying to eliminate humanity before we could become a threat to them. Alex stepped forward and spoke into the communication system. Doc, if they tried to wipe us out in 2156, why are we still here, and why are they gone? Lisa's answer sent chills through everyone on the bridge. I don't know why we survived, Alex, but I know why they're gone. According to their final entries, something was coming for them, something that had tracked them across the galaxy and was systematically destroying every Vorthak world. The last entry is just a few words. The Terrans have found us. It is over. Jake stared out at the dead planet below and finally understood what they had discovered. This wasn't just the ruins of another dead civilization. This was ground zero of a war that humanity had apparently won without even knowing they were fighting it. The message reached Earth faster than any communication in human history. President Helen Baker stood in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the United Earth Council building, watching as the most powerful people in human space gathered around the holographic display. The evidence from the Vorthak homeworld glowed in the center of the room like a terrible star. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to see will change how we understand our place in the galaxy, President Baker said as the room fell silent. She nodded to Dr. Carl Jensen, humanity's leading expert on alien species, who stepped forward to address the assembled leaders. Dr. Jensen activated the holographic display, and images from the Vorthak database filled the air around them. 3 days ago, Captain Morrison's expedition discovered the ruins of a civilization that called itself the Vorthak. What we found in their records has shaken the foundation of everything we thought we knew about our early expansion into space. The first image showed the Mars research station, a gleaming facility that had housed over 3,000 scientists and their families. In 2156, this station suffered what we recorded as a catastrophic reactor failure. Every soul aboard was lost, and the explosion was so complete that we never recovered enough evidence to determine the exact cause. Dr. Jensen paused and looked around the room. According to Vorthak records, they destroyed this station with a focused energy weapon fired from a cloaked ship. It was their first strike in what they planned to be the complete elimination of the human species. Gasps echoed through the room as the terrible truth began to sink in. General Ryan Murphy, head of Human Defense Command, leaned forward in his chair. Doctor, are you telling us that every unexplained disaster from that period was actually an attack? That's exactly what I'm telling you, General. The Generation ship New Horizon that vanished while traveling to Wolf 359 was intercepted and destroyed by a Vorthak battle fleet. The Alpha Centauri colony that went silent overnight was bombed from orbit until nothing remained but glass and ash. The mining accident on Ceres that killed 800 workers was actually a targeted strike on our asteroid mining operations. President Baker felt sick to her stomach as she listened to the list of atrocities. Thousands of humans had died in what they thought were accidents, but they had actually been murdered by an alien species that saw them as nothing more than pests to be eliminated. Admiral Kate Phillips, commander of the Human Defense Fleet, stood up and studied the data flowing across the displays. Dr. Jensen, if they were so successful in their attacks, why did they stop? Why are we still here while they're extinct? Dr. Jensen smiled grimly and activated another section of the database. That's where this story becomes even more interesting, Admiral. The Vorthak records show that they had successfully eliminated 43 different species using the same tactics they tried on us. They would strike without warning, destroy key installations, and then systematically hunt down any survivors until the entire species was extinct. But something went wrong when they tried it on humans, Dr. Jensen continued. Their records indicate that after their initial strikes, human colonies began to disappear in a different way. Not destroyed, but evacuated. Ships that should have been easy targets started vanishing into deep space instead of being caught and destroyed. Commander Alex Rodriguez appeared on the communication screen from the Vorthak homeworld. President Baker, we've found more information in their military files. It appears that humanity responded to their attacks in a way that no other species had ever done. Instead of fighting back in conventional ways or trying to negotiate, humans simply vanished. President Baker stared at the screen. What do you mean vanished? According to the Vorthak files, human colonies that came under attack would evacuate completely within hours. The colonists would destroy anything useful and disappear into deep space, using routes that the Vorthak couldn't track. It was like trying to fight an enemy made of smoke. Dr. Jensen pulled up tactical displays from the Vorthak database. The Vorthak had never encountered a species that could adapt so quickly to their tactics. Other species would try to defend their homeworlds, their colonies, their important facilities. Humans just abandoned everything and rebuilt somewhere else. But that's not the end of the story, Commander Rodriguez said from the planet's surface. The Vorthak records show that sometime around 2160, their ships started disappearing. Not destroyed in battle, just gone. Entire fleets would go out on hunting missions and never return. Admiral Phillips studied the tactical data with growing amazement. They were being hunted. Someone was tracking Vorthak ships and eliminating them one by one. The final entries in their database are terrifying, Dr. Jensen said as he activated the last section of records. By 2170, the Vorthak had lost over half their fleet, and they still didn't know who was hunting them. They only knew that their hunters were completely ruthless and seemed to know exactly where every Vorthak ship would be before the Vorthak themselves knew. President Baker felt a chill as she began to understand what had happened. The humans they tried to exterminate fought back, but not in any way the Vorthak expected. The last entry in their database is from 2175, Commander Rodriguez said. It reads, "The Terrans have found our homeworld. Our fleets are destroyed. Our colonies burn. We tried to eliminate a species of prey and discovered we had attacked a species of hunters. It is over." The room fell completely silent as the implications hit everyone at once. Humanity hadn't just survived an alien attempt at genocide. They had tracked their attackers across the galaxy and systematically destroyed an entire civilization that had successfully wiped out 43 other species. General Murphy was the first to speak. So somewhere out there are humans who spent 20 years hunting down and eliminating every single Vorthak in the galaxy, and we never knew about it. Dr. Jensen nodded. Our ancestors who survived the initial attacks didn't just run away. They studied their enemy, learned how to fight them, and then methodically erased the Vorthak from existence. The question is, who were these humans and where are they now? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Admiral Phillips received an urgent communication, and her face went white as she listened. President Baker, long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving toward human space. The configuration matches Vorthak technology. President Baker felt the world spinning around her. Are you telling me there are still Vorthak ships out there? It appears so, Madam President, and they're heading straight for our colonies. President Baker looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Then we finish what our ancestors started. Send a message to every human world, every colony, every ship. The species that tried to destroy us has returned, and this time we're ready for them. Captain Danny Wright gripped the arms of his command chair as the UES Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 128 system. The red dwarf star hung in space ahead of them like a dying ember, and somewhere in the darkness beyond, Vorthak ships were moving toward human colonies. Danny had commanded warships for 15 years, but he had never faced an enemy that had tried to wipe out his entire species. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Lieutenant Rick Torres called out from the sensor station. Configuration matches Vorthak destroyer class from the database files. They're moving toward the colony on Ross 128B. Danny studied the tactical display and felt his stomach tighten. The colony on Ross 128B had over 50,000 civilians, including families with children who had never seen war. How long until they reach the planet? 6 hours at their current speed, Captain, Torres replied. But sir, there's something strange about their approach. They're not trying to hide their presence at all. It's like they want us to know they're coming. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from her station with concern in her eyes. Captain, based on the Vorthak database, this doesn't match their usual attack pattern. They normally strike without warning from cloaked ships. This feels more like a test. Danny nodded as he considered the implications. The Vorthak had spent 2 centuries believing they had successfully eliminated humanity from the galaxy. Now they had discovered that humans were not only still alive, but had spread across dozens of star systems. This attack might be their way of testing human military capabilities. All hands, this is the captain, Danny said into the ship's communication system. We are about to engage an enemy that tried to commit genocide against our species. They think they're dealing with the same humans they attacked 200 years ago. They're wrong. The UES Vengeance moved deeper into the system with its weapons powered and shields at maximum strength. Danny had trained his crew for months based on everything they had learned from the Vorthak database. But training was different from facing an enemy that had successfully destroyed 43 entire civilizations. Enemy ship is accelerating toward the planet, Torres reported. They're ignoring us completely, Captain. It's like we don't even exist to them. That was the first mistake the Vorthak made. Danny smiled grimly as he realized they were about to discover that modern humans were nothing like the colonial settlers they had attacked centuries ago. Amy, target their engines and fire. The Vengeance's main guns erupted in brilliant flashes of energy that crossed the void between the 2 ships in seconds. The Vorthak destroyer's shields flared as the weapons struck home, but the alien ship continued moving toward the planet without even changing course. No damage to target, Amy reported with surprise in her voice. Their shields absorbed our entire salvo without any apparent effect. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. The Vorthak ship had just shrugged off weapons that could destroy any human vessel with a single hit. Fire again, full spread pattern. This time the Vengeance unleashed everything it had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and plasma charges filled the space between the ships like a deadly light show. The Vorthak destroyer's shields glowed brighter but still held firm against the assault. Captain, they're returning fire, Amy called out just as the first enemy weapon struck the Vengeance. The ship shook violently as alien energy beams tore through their shields and carved deep gouges in the hull armor. Danny gripped his chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels around the bridge. In less than 30 seconds of combat, the Vorthak had demonstrated that their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's best weapons. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, Chief Engineer Tony Lewis reported over the communication system. Shield generators are offline and main power is down to 60%. Captain, their weapons are unlike anything in our database. The Vorthak destroyer continued toward the planet as if the Vengeance no longer mattered. Danny realized with growing horror that the alien ship could destroy his vessel whenever it chose to, but it was more interested in reaching the helpless colony below. Sir, we're receiving a communication from the Vorthak ship, Torres said with confusion in his voice. It's in perfect English. Put it through, Danny ordered. A cold, inhuman voice filled the bridge. Human vessel. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. We have returned to complete the task we began 2 centuries ago. Your species will be eliminated from the galaxy as punishment for your interference in Vorthak affairs. Danny activated the ship's communication system and spoke directly to the alien commander. This is Captain Wright of the United Earthship Vengeance. You tried to destroy humanity once before and failed. We're still here and we're not running away. The alien voice seemed almost amused when it replied. Foolish creatures. We eliminated 43 species before we encountered your primitive ancestors. We would have succeeded then if your people had not fled like cowards into the darkness, between stars. This time we will hunt down every human colony, every ship, every survivor until none remain. You can try, Danny said with steel in his voice. But you should know that the humans you're facing today are not the same ones you attacked 200 years ago. The communication ended abruptly and the Vorthak destroyer resumed its course toward the planet. Danny watched the tactical display with growing desperation as he realized his ship couldn't stop the enemy vessel from reaching the colony. Then Amy Foster looked up from her station with an expression Danny had never seen before. Captain, I've been analyzing their weapon signatures and shield frequencies, Amy said with excitement in her voice. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly old. They haven't changed their designs in centuries. Danny felt a spark of hope. What are you thinking, Colonel? I'm thinking that while we can't match their raw power, we might be able to outthink them. Every weapon system has weaknesses if you know how to exploit them. We just need to be creative. Danny looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were humans who had grown up knowing that their ancestors had survived an attempted genocide and had somehow fought back against impossible odds. Amy, what do you need? Time to analyze their shield harmonics and a willingness to try something that's never been attempted before, Amy replied with determination in her voice. Danny smiled as he realized what his tactical officer was planning. The Vorthak expected humans to fight like every other species they had encountered. They expected conventional tactics, predictable strategies, and inevitable surrender when faced with superior firepower. Do it, Danny ordered. Show them what? Humans learned while they were sleeping. General Ryan Murphy stood in the massive command center buried deep beneath Luna's surface, watching as tactical displays showed human ships moving throughout the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the first battle at Ross 128, and everything had changed. The war that had begun with a single Vorthak destroyer testing human defenses had exploded into a conflict spanning dozens of star systems. General, we're receiving reports from Captain Beth Martinez at Kepler 186, Major Kim Sanders said as she approached the command table. The Battle of Kepler 186b has concluded. The planet is secure, and the Vorthak fleet has been destroyed. Murphy felt a surge of satisfaction as he studied the battle reports flowing across his screens. Captain Martinez had used the new tactics that Colonel Amy Foster had developed after the Ross 128 encounter, and the results were remarkable. Where human ships had once been outgunned and outmatched, they were now winning decisive victories against Vorthak forces. What were our losses? Murphy asked. Minimal, sir. 3 destroyers damaged but no ships lost. The Vorthak lost 12 vessels, including 2 heavy cruisers. Sanders replied with pride in her voice. Captain Martinez reports that the enemy seemed completely confused by our new attack patterns. Murphy nodded as he remembered how the tide of war had begun to turn. After Amy Foster's breakthrough at Ross 128, human engineers and tacticians had worked around the clock to develop new ways of fighting that took advantage of humanity's greatest strength. While the Vorthak relied on brute force and overwhelming firepower, humans had learned to fight smart. Engineer Tony Lewis appeared on the main communication screen from the shipyards orbiting Mars. General Murphy, I'm pleased to report that the new ship designs are exceeding all expectations. We're now producing vessels that can be built in half the time of our old designs and can be modified for different missions in a matter of hours. How many ships are we talking about, Tony? Murphy asked. As of this morning, we have over 800 vessels of various classes either completed or under construction. More importantly, every single one incorporates the adaptive systems that allow our crews to change their tactics in real time during battle. Murphy studied the production figures with amazement. Human industrial capacity had been completely mobilized for war, with every colony, every asteroid mining station, and every orbital factory contributing to the effort. But more than raw numbers, it was human innovation that was making the difference. Doctor. Steve Palmer's voice came through the communication system from his research facility on Europa. General, the psychological profiles we've developed on Vorthak behavior patterns are proving incredibly valuable in the field. Their species has never had to adapt their tactics because overwhelming force has always worked for them before. What does that mean for our strategy going forward? Murphy asked. It means they're psychologically incapable of learning from their defeats, Dr. Palmer explained. Every other species they encountered either submitted or fought using predictable military doctrine. When they face tactics they've never seen before, they simply cannot adjust their thinking fast enough to counter them. Murphy smiled as he thought about the reports coming in from battlefields across human space. Vorthak commanders who had successfully destroyed entire civilizations were being defeated by human captains who had never fought a real battle before the war began. The key was that humans never fought the same way twice. Captain Joe Harrison's image appeared on another screen from the bridge of the UES Defiance. General Murphy, we've completed our reconnaissance of the outer Vorthak territories. What we found there changes everything about this conflict. Murphy felt his pulse quicken. Report, Captain. Sir, the Vorthak didn't come back to finish exterminating humanity because they wanted to. They came back because they had to. Our deep space probes have discovered that something has been systematically destroying Vorthak colonies throughout their territory for the past 50 years. The command center fell silent as the implications of Harrison's report sank in. Are you telling me that someone else is at war with the Vorthak? Murphy asked. Not someone else, sir. Us. The humans who survived their original attacks 2 centuries ago didn't just disappear into deep space. They've been out there this whole time, slowly and methodically hunting down every Vorthak world they could find. Murphy stared at the tactical displays as his understanding of the entire conflict shifted. Captain, are you saying there are other human civilizations out there that we've never made contact with? That's exactly what I'm saying, General. The descendants of the colonies that evacuated during the original Vorthak attacks have been conducting their own war for 200 years. They've been so successful that they've driven the Vorthak back to their core systems, which is why the Vorthak decided to launch this new offensive against known human space. Major Sanders looked up from her communication station with excitement in her voice. General, we're receiving a transmission from deep space. The signal is definitely human in origin, but it's using encryption codes that are centuries old. Murphy felt his heart racing as he realized what was happening. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers sounded human but carried an edge of cold determination that sent chills through everyone in the command center. This is Admiral Patricia Moore of the Deep Space Fleet. We have been monitoring your conflict with the Vorthak remnant forces. It is time for all branches of humanity to coordinate our efforts. Murphy activated the communication system with hands that were almost shaking. Admiral Moore, this is General Murphy of United Earth Defense Command. We had no idea that any humans had survived the original attacks. We did more than survive, General. We have spent 2 centuries studying our enemy, learning their weaknesses, and systematically eliminating their presence from the galaxy. The Vorthak forces you have been fighting represent the last desperate remnants of a species that once controlled 300 star systems. Murphy looked around the command center at the faces of his staff. Admiral, what do you need from us? We need you to hold the line while we complete our mission, General. In 72 hours, our forces will begin the final assault on the remaining Vorthak strongholds. When we are finished, the species that tried to exterminate humanity will cease to exist. Murphy felt a surge of pride as he realized what humanity had accomplished. 200 years ago, the Vorthak had tried to wipe out a young species that was just beginning to explore the stars. Instead, they had created an enemy that was now capable of erasing them from the galaxy completely. Admiral Moore, United Earth Defense Command stands ready to support your mission in any way possible. Thank you, General. The children of Earth are about to finish what their ancestors started. The Vorthak chose extinction when they chose to attack humanity. We are simply honoring their choice. Admiral Kate Phillips watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution. As the largest human fleet in history assembled in the empty space between stars, ships from every human world had gathered for what would be the final battle of a war that had lasted 2 centuries. Beside the familiar designs of United Earth vessels hung the strange and deadly ships of the Deep Space Fleet, craft that had been built in the darkness between worlds by humans who had spent their entire lives hunting. The Vorthak. Admiral, final count shows 1,800 vessels ready for the assault. Captain Gary Robinson reported from his position at the tactical station. Admiral Moore's forces have provided us with complete intelligence on the remaining Vorthaki strongholds. Phillips nodded as she studied the battle plans that had been developed jointly by both human fleets. The Vorthak had retreated to their original homeworld system, where they had concentrated every remaining ship and defensive platform. It would be the most heavily defended target that any human force had ever attempted to assault. Admiral Patricia. Moore's image appeared on the main communication screen. The leader of the Deep Space Fleet was an older woman, whose eyes held the cold determination of someone who had spent decades planning the complete destruction of an entire species. Admiral Phillips, our long-range sensors confirm that the Vorthak have assembled their entire remaining fleet in the homeworld system. They're making their final stand. How many ships are we facing? Phillips asked. Approximately 400 vessels of various classes, plus orbital defense platforms that have been built up over thousands of years. Under normal circumstances, it would be considered an impregnable fortress. Phillips smiled grimly as she considered the combined strength of humanity's forces. But these aren't normal circumstances. No, they're not, Moore replied with satisfaction in her voice. The Vorthak are about to discover what happens when a species that has survived by hunting others finally becomes the prey. The combined human fleet began moving toward the Vorthak homeworld system in perfect formation. Phillips had been amazed at how quickly the crews from both fleets had learned to work together. Despite being separated for 2 centuries, all humans seemed to share the same fundamental approaches to warfare and the same determination to see their enemy completely eliminated. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak homeworld, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Jackson reported from the communication station. They're requesting negotiations. Phillips felt a moment of dark amusement. Put it through. The alien voice that filled the bridge carried none of the arrogant confidence that had marked earlier Vorthak communications. Human fleets, we propose an immediate ceasefire and negotiations for peaceful coexistence. The Vorthak are prepared to withdraw from all disputed territories and recognize human sovereignty over your current domains. Admiral Moore's voice came through the communication system with ice-cold clarity. Vorthak Commander, 200 years ago your species had the opportunity for peaceful coexistence. You chose genocide instead. There will be no negotiations. We can offer you technology, knowledge of the galaxy, information about other species. The Vorthak commander replied with desperation creeping into its voice. Surely the resources we can provide are worth more than our destruction. Phillips activated her own communication system. You offered those same resources to the 43 species you exterminated. How did that work out for them? The past cannot be changed, the alien voice pleaded. We acted according to our nature as all species do. Surely your own nature includes the capacity for mercy. Admiral Moore's reply sent chills through everyone listening. You're right that we act according to our nature. Our nature is to never forget and never forgive those who try to destroy us. You chose extinction when you attacked humanity. We are simply delivering what you ordered. The communication ended, and the human fleet continued its approach toward the Vorthak homeworld. Phillips watched as the enemy fleet moved into defensive positions around their planet. Even facing complete annihilation, the Vorthak were preparing to fight rather than surrender. All ships, this is Admiral Phillips, she announced over the fleet communication network. We are about to engage an enemy that tried to erase humanity from the galaxy. They succeeded in destroying 43 other species before they encountered us. Today we make sure they never threaten anyone again. The battle began when the Vorthak opened fire at maximum range with weapons that could destroy entire moons. Human ships scattered in all directions, using the unpredictable movement patterns that had proven so effective throughout the war. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on like every previous species had done, the human fleet flowed around the Vorthak defenses like water around stones. Captain Joe Harrison led the first assault wave aboard the UES Vengeance. The ship that had barely survived the first encounter with Vorthak technology now tore through enemy formations with weapons and tactics that the aliens couldn't comprehend or counter. Admiral Phillips, their defensive formations are collapsing. They can't adapt to our attack patterns. Phillips watched with satisfaction as human ships systematically dismantled defenses that had protected the Vorthak homeworld for millennia. Every lesson learned during 2 centuries of warfare was being applied with devastating effectiveness. The aliens who had once seemed invincible were being destroyed by an enemy they had created through their own cruelty. Admiral, Vorthak orbital platforms are going offline throughout the system, Captain Martinez reported from the UES Defiance. Enemy fleet strength is down by 60% and falling rapidly. The final phase of the battle was almost anticlimactic. The remaining Vorthak ships, trapped between 2 human fleets and unable to match human tactical flexibility, were systematically hunted down and destroyed. When the last enemy vessel exploded in brilliant flash of light, the Vorthak homeworld hung defenseless in space below the victorious human fleet. Admiral Moore's voice filled the communication channels one final time. All human vessels stand ready for planetary bombardment. We finish this now. Phillips watched as every human ship in the fleet turned its weapons toward the planet below. The world that had been the center of a civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years was about to become nothing more than melted rock and radioactive dust. Fire, Moore commanded. The combined firepower of 1,800 human warships struck the Vorthak homeworld simultaneously. The planet's surface erupted in a continuous chain of explosions that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Within minutes, the world that had spawned a species dedicated to galactic genocide had been rendered completely lifeless. President Helen Baker's voice came through the fleet communication system from Earth. Citizens of humanity, the species that tried to erase us from existence has been eliminated from the galaxy. Let this serve as a message to any who would threaten our people. We do not forget, we do not forgive, and we do not lose. Admiral Phillips looked out at the glowing remains of the Vorthak homeworld and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The war that had begun with mysterious disasters striking human colonies 2 centuries ago was finally over. Humanity had not just survived an attempted genocide, they had tracked their enemies across the galaxy and erased them from existence. The last species that had angered humans was gone forever.